This is Gemini Launch Control. We're now T-minus 2 minutes and counting on the Atlas Agena launch. And at Launch Complex 19, they are just closing the hatches on the Gemini 8 spacecraft with astronauts Neil Armstrong and David Scott aboard. We have now closed the liquid oxygen vents on the Atlas launch vehicle as we reach down into the final phases of the count. Coming up at the 140 mark will be the launch vehicle going on the internal power of its own batteries. Of course, it's been on external power controlled by the blockhouse power up to this time. Now 1 minute and 26 seconds and counting. All systems still looking good. A final status check going on at Launch Complex 14 at the present time. All appears still to be go. T-minus 1 minute and 15 seconds. Launch Complex 19, the crewmen are still working to secure the hatches on the Gemini 8 spacecraft. Now 1 minute and 5 seconds and counting. T-minus 60 seconds and counting on the Atlas Agena at Launch Complex 14. Our final check still looking good at this point. We have now armed the range safety destruct system in the Atlas vehicle. To repeat, when we get down to the final seconds of the count, we will have a momentary hold at about the T-minus 18-second mark as we go on an automatic sequence from that time. Now 1 minute and 35 seconds and counting. We'll get the ignition of the Atlas vehicle at about 4 seconds and expected liftoff at 0 or the 95-minute mark in the simultaneous count. Now T-minus 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 18 holding momentarily, now resuming the count. T-minus 15. T-minus 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. We have ignition.
There's ignition, and the Atlas rocket showers its pad with a bright burst of flames. It's airborne now, and it's rising into the sky, a beautiful liftoff. It's a smooth flight. Everything is going as it should be. You can now hear the thunder as it sweeps across our NBC observation point. Typical rattlesnakes and alligators out there are pretty good shaking, I would say. It's a smooth flight. She looks good. Beginning to arc over at this moment in its flight path. It is beginning to point the Agena target rocket toward the rendezvous orbit. Its flight is smooth. It's continuing to climb into this clear Florida sky. It's a deep blue sky today. There's only a very few clouds to block our view. Just a tiny pin light of a fire now as the Atlas continues its flight into orbit. It was a smooth liftoff. And at this time, the rocket is beginning to create its own clouds as it enters cold air high above the Atlantic Ocean. Its thrust is being turned into small ice particles, actually, as it cools itself at this altitude. This is known as condensation, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen these condensation trails before by high-flying jet aircraft. Everything is going according to plan. The Atlas Agena is well out over the Atlantic Ocean at this moment, with all going smoothly during the first half of this flight. The Agena target is on course of 83 degrees, almost due east, and the Atlas booster engines have just about burned out all of their fuel at this time. In just a moment, the two booster engines on top of the Atlas will actually burn out and drop away, and the third stage will keep firing and moving along.
Mark Bico.
Bico
did occur on the program time at 2 minutes 11 seconds.
Boss, you're listening to it.
The Atlas now about 50 miles away from the Cape. Altitude about 40 miles.
You're listening to the voice of Paul Haney from Mission Control in Houston, describing the flight.
Our next major event comes at 4 minutes and 37 seconds into the flight when a sequence timer is to be tripped.
We have lost our view of the Atlas Agena rocket from this vantage point. Now back down to Russ Ward.
We're 100 miles downrange.
Right, Jay.
And
He's moving 100 miles downrange now. That was a late report.
At
Paul Haney.
the 3-minute mark into the flight.
3-minute mark into the flight. So we're moving along smoothly now. That was the first of 2 launchings today. The Atlas Agena now moving along, and we recall that morning of October 25th when we thought...